It's a pleasure for us to welcome you in Brussels. Sebastian talked about an explosive development of the passive standards, and that's right. I've just seen the trend in Hanover this morning. It's a little bit slower. It's quite interesting. And we actually based ourselves on the Hanover experience and also on the city of Freiburg that we visited in 2006. In 2006, we had the minister and a delegation of several real estate developers who visited the city of Freiburg in Germany, and we visited many passive buildings, and we said, why couldn't we do the same in Brussels? So we based ourselves on that experience to create an explosion of passive buildings in Brussels. We are probably the baddest pupil. We were the worst pupil of Europe. In 2001, so you see on orange, we had an important loss, 250 megajoules per square meter. Other countries were better insulated, and we said we were probably amongst the worst. We want now to be amongst the best. And we said by 2015 we will impose 10 times less losses for heating in the buildings. So that's the first step. In 2010, the EPB recast directive imposes the zero energy or almost zero energy, and passive standard is an important step to reach the zero energy on the insulation part. Then the second step will be renewable energies, solar energy, etc. So that passive standard is very important for us. We believe a lot in it, and we've tried to put it in practice since the very beginning. So these are the criteria to build new buildings here in Brussels. It's about the 19 municipalities. So all buildings in the 19 municipalities of Brussels will have to stick to the regional rules, the rules of the Brussels region. And in the last year, we've worked with the construction sector, with architects, with passive houses platforms to try and make that standard passive that is on a voluntary basis right now. So it's the best buildings with a good orientation that are quite naturally going to be in line with the passive standard. But if you impose the standard to all types of buildings, then you have to adapt the rules. If there is a building in the shadow of the neighboring building, a building that is not that does not get a lot of solar energy, so we'll have to adapt the rules so that it can be applicable to all the buildings. So that's very important. And we've tried to take account of several elements. We've put in place a system of derogation for certain types of buildings that are not well oriented. They can reach the passive standard. It means they can have the same insulation thickness in the walls as a passive building that is well located, but as it's not well located, even if you have the same thickness of insulation, it's going to consume 20, 25, 27 kilowatt per hour instead of 15 for the heating. So there's the derogation procedure that has been put in place, and it's very important. So if there is not enough solar gains, too much shadow, a bad capacity, which is the ratio between floor area and deperdition area, if there is a rebuild here, the envelope, the framework of the building has been kept and all the rest has been changed. So for some buildings, for the European Commission, for example, the comfort level of the buildings is above average in terms of lighting, in terms of ventilation, etc. So the passive standards were too binding, was too strict. So we had to adapt it as well. And then for other ventilation systems as well. The passive standard, adapted to some exceptions, is now being approved by the government and should be approved at the end of 2012. So at the end of 2012, we'll have a passive standard for buildings that are well located and a passive standard for buildings that are not well located. And this is part of the EPBD regulation in the Brussels capital region. So that's the first step for the zero energy. Then the call for tenders, exemplary buildings, was a starting point. We said we are going to invest a lot of subsidies, €100 per square meter, in order to really encourage passive buildings, exemplary model buildings. We had about 300 candidates, 200 winners for 470,000 square meters. Half of them are passive buildings. 250,000 square meters are passive. The investment is about €604 million, and a subsidy is only less than €30 million. And thanks to that call for projects, exemplary buildings, and I think you will visit some of the buildings, we were able to accompany the whole construction sector, the architects. We were there to help them change the way of designing or building houses and buildings. We want to be very careful with the energy performances, and it works. It works. We've just selected the candidates for 2012. They're very nice projects, all kind of projects: housing, creches, old people's houses, offices like this one, even a mosque, for example. So we have all types of passive buildings, and we really insisted. So €100 on per square meter for cost of €1,200 per square meter. And that's a way to start the passive standards and to raise people's awareness. So in this explosive stuff, the call for projects, exemplary buildings, was an important trigger. So if you want to follow the example of the Brussels capital region, we invite you to launch this kind of call for projects called exemplary buildings, in order to help the sector join the train on energy efficiency. Now, where's the limit? The sky is the limit. And we've started an analysis to say whether it was possible to build the passive skyscrapers in Brussels, in the Rue de la Loi, for example. Yes, it's possible to create a tower of 165 meters high, and it's possible. Well, thank you for your attention.